Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I am your host, Aggelos, and we are here in the Mighty Beard Tavern. That's right. That's the music you hear in the background. Yes, the Mighty Beard Tavern itself to discuss Ashes of Creation. And with me, I have some awesome people. First up, new to the show, one of our Hands of Fate guild members, Alpha Soul. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Very good today.
Excellent, excellent. And down there, on the bottom of your screen, my co-GM over at Hands of Fate, Stormzlord. How are you?
I'm doing awesome tonight.
Excellent, excellent. We have a fun show planned for you tonight. But before we get into that, obviously a couple things I have to do is I have to give a shout out to a couple of our awesome people over at patreon.com/Dungeon Crawler Network. They help support the show and everything you see here. So definitely a shout out to Harry and also to, here it is, Vincent. There we go. Thank you so much, guys. Those are our new pledges for this month. You guys are amazing. Help us keep the metaphorical torches lit and the podcasts flowing. All right. Now, since we brought Alpha Soul onto the show, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and, where you come from in gaming?
Yeah, sure. Whoops, sorry about that. All right, yeah. So my name's Alpha Soul. I've been playing games for roughly, I'd say about 25 years since I was 12, and not games, but just MMOs specifically. So I started off in playing Nanny Muds or multi-user dungeons, and then I moved on to UO. So I've been kind of around for a bit.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's been pretty fun. In my real life, I work as a product manager in the digital space, and games that I'm playing currently are, Sea of Thieves, Guild Wars 2 I kind of dabble in, ESO I dabble in, as well as The Division. So kind of splitting my time and biding my time until Ashes comes out.
Right. I think that's what we're all doing right now.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are tempting me with Sea of Thieves, so we'll probably talk about that a little bit tonight because it actually kind of leans into what we're going to be covering during our discussion today on this show. And we are actually going to be talking about griefing in MMOs and anti-grief systems, things that other games are doing to prevent this type of toxic player behavior, or whether or not we think it should even be mitigated. Ooh, fun. Maybe a little bit of darker show here.
Gotcha.
I know this actually came up as part of Sea of Thieves launch because Stormzlord down there, you could thank him for this topic, brought this up as something for us to talk about because he liked the way that Sea of Thieves is handling griefing and how they are preventing it with their anti-griefing system. So
actually the opposite, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's all right.
Maybe I should have read that, DM a little clearer. I thought that. Okay. All right.
Possibly.
Well, and this is actually interesting, and I'm glad that I have you guys on this show. And Alpha, I'm glad that you're here as well because you, like you said, Ultima Online. If you played Ultima, I played Ultima. I loved Ultima, and actually one of the reasons why I was so interested in Ashes of Creation was people would always ask me what my perfect MMO would be, and I said an updated Ultima Online with that type of system in place. And Ashes really got me with what they were calling their karma system, or their corruption system rather. It was karma and UO, and that immediately went, whoa, wait a minute, let's look at this for a second. So and here we are 40 episodes later, still recording. So all right, so let's go ahead and just jump right on into this. Storms, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on what you're thinking? We'll kind of springboard off of that.
A couple things. So let's focus on it for a second. Sea of Thieves, right? It was got on yesterday. First plugged into to a ship, a galleon with 3 others, and within 2 minutes, I had done nothing. I was in the brig, right? So they had voted to put me in the brig, right? Why? Don't know. You can't get out of the brig. You're in the brig for 80 minutes, or you quit the game, or that particular that one. That's it. You're stuck. So it's like, okay, so I could quit and get another ship, which is fine, but I didn't do anything, right? I didn't shoot anybody. I didn't. I was trying to figure it out, and all of a sudden I'm in a brig. So I don't know. To me, that's like, it's sort of an anti-grief thing, and I not like the way they implemented it, because what does it mean, right? What do you can gang up on somebody, or if he's acting like a total jerk, yeah, okay, but what if they're not?
You know, and this is actually that type of system that you're referring to, like the brig or jail or whatever. A few games have done this in the past. I'm trying to remember if Ultima did that. But
The brig?
a type of brig. Like I know World of Warcraft did that with a prisoner island or a GM island if you were a bad player, but that was only in the very early stages of World of Warcraft, and then they kind of moved away from that. They actually moved away from GMs interacting in the world pretty much at all, outside of Whispers. Once upon a time, they used to come into the world and talk to you. Ultima Online had GMs that would come into the world and talk to you and interact with you, which was really cool. But the idea of voting somebody into prison or, acting like, judge, jury, executioner, that is actually fairly popular in a few different Eastern MMOs. I'm trying to think of one that has it most recently. I think ArcAge had it.
ArcAge had that voting system with, like, if you got killed as a PK, you would be brought to court, and then it'd be this like trial that you would have with the witnesses that reported you, or that bloodstain or something like that. And then you could kind of like go and vote to see whether or not they would be placed in jail or they go free.
Okay, so yeah, that is the one I was thinking of, because I remember seeing it in like a zone chat or something, which of course pretty much turned toxic very quickly, because you'd have people, lol, he's in prison. Like you could see that some of the people voting and doing stuff like that were intentionally targeting people of, like, I want to say enemy guilds to get them out of the fight. So, I mean, they gamed that system pretty hard. And by the end of it, what was a fairly interesting system, I feel like just kind of degraded into all right, we're going to war with this guild. Let's try to get as many people out of the game as possible by saying they did something they didn't. And, like you could just report anybody. I'm trying to think, it was another MMO, I thought, or maybe it was Diablo 3. They had a completely automated system that if you got enough reports, you were automatically banned from chat and eventually could go up to an account ban. I'm trying to remember. It was fairly recently. What game was that? Because there were people who were reporting to the company that they were banned from the game for years, and it was people like popular streamers who their name was out there, so people who didn't like them just all reported that so and so was throwing swear words all over general chat, and now because it was a completely automated system based on whether or not I almost feel like maybe it was Overwatch. It was popular. I know that it was popular and it was recent. I'm almost sure it was Overwatch, but it was like an automated system that people were abusing, to get them out of chat and then like suspended in the game because there was no human interaction in the system. So
look at ESO, right? You can kick out of a dungeon, right? That's at the most you're going to get, rather than putting a ticket in. But with that, you're kicked out of a group of 4, and you go on your merry way, right?
Unless you were
This
a
one,
DPS, where you waited for an hour to get into that time.
4 hours, right? That's why I was a healer or a tank. But yeah, for that, I just, it's like, game had just launched, Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
First time in, I could throw into the brig for 3 guys. I don't know. And then it's either, well, what do I do? Because you got to look up, well, what do I do in the brig? Can I get out? Can I shoot somebody? I couldn't do anything. But anyways, to me, it was like, I don't like that one. But the karma system in Ashes, what's the ultimate effect of that karma if they don't care?
And that is, this is a fun discussion to have because, okay, if you're unsure, many of the people who are watching the show probably follow the game just as closely as we do. So I'm sure you know what is happening. But with the Ashes of Creation karma system, if you attack a non-combatant, which is anybody who is not manually flagged for PvP, or either voluntarily or involuntarily enters a PvP zone or activity. Any type of PvP zone could be a PvP objective, such as a caravan, a siege, right? If a siege is going on, if you are in that city, you're automatically flagged as a combatant, whether or not you really wanted to fight it or not. It's just, you're in a war zone, or any of the other related sieges. But if someone comes up and stabs you while you're out picking flowers and you don't fight back, you are a non-combatant, and they gain a stack of corruption, which is like this anti-corruption or this anti-griefing mechanic. But what that actually does, we only know in some of the vaguest hints. I think they said that there's a chance for skill loss, like skill point loss, having to re-level up skills, incurring huge amounts of experience debt, which will eventually affect your actual player stats, and then possibly lost gear.
I like the stats more than the gear, to be frank. Personally, if you look at ESO, right, in PvP, in IC, there is no anti-griefing system. They're just gonna get you, right? Take for instance, we got an issue with a guild thing going on, another guild I'm in, and we've got one guy who is in the same guild but always plays in the other faction, knows how everybody runs, watches TeamSpeak, doesn't enter the channel but watches TeamSpeak, so we can figure out who's in there as the healer, who's in there, right? So it's really, really tough. There's nothing you can do about it.
That actually kind of leads into one of our mailbag questions later. Maybe that person shouldn't be in the guild anymore. That's all I'm thinking.
There's that. And that proceeding is on its way, right? Okay. That is really going through. But again, it's very, there's really, in the ESL, there's no build against that.
Yeah, and that's a type of spy-related, espionage in that game. But I mean, in ESO, there's really not a way to grief somebody. And I say that in the PvP zone because I can't attack you, Storms, because we're both of the same faction. If you're on the good faction anyway. But
I am on the DC faction.
No.
Oh.
Them be fighting words. But I mean, if someone's of the opposing faction and I see you're in a war zone, you're all combatants. That's there are some people, like when we were doing the guild event, the Hands of Fate guild event last week. Yeah, we had that one Khajiit who essentially was trolling us like crazy because he would kill one of us and then just ninja stealth away. However he was doing that, it was insane. And he knew what he was doing. Like, he was just hunting us down, picking us off one at a time, and then just disappearing and, running away. I don't really consider that even griefing at that point, even though, it was annoying for us as players because we were getting killed by one guy who wouldn't stick around long enough to, he targeted the weakest member of our group, killed him over and over and over again, and we just couldn't catch him.
Yeah.
But when we... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to echo that. I actually don't consider that griefing, only because it's still kind of within the realm of things. Sure, we couldn't catch him, but potentially you could catch him.
Yes, yeah, they're without negative repercussions to us. If we could have caught him and killed him, yeah, we would have caught him and killed him. Coming back to Ashes, do you feel like, and my concern is, how is the XP debt and skill loss going to be fixed? Yeah, obviously to get XP, on your character as it comes back up and you go out of the negative skill debt, maybe that's how you're going to regain some of your stats. But what happens if you get so much of it that your character's effectively worthless, that you can't even kill anything anymore?
I think that's what you should do.
Really?
I mean, so again, yeah, it's a matter of you're in a PvP zone, wherever we are in there, except within the safe zone. But if your purpose is to kill not necessarily the healer, but the weakest or those who aren't even fighting, that's something different, right? So that I see that. Yep, they should be down. They should just keep going down and be done. Because if not, what's the threat?
Mm-hmm.
What's the? It's like making a threat to your kids. If you don't follow through, it's not gonna it's not gonna keep going, right?
Yep.
That's not gonna have any effect.
Yeah, we're all dads here, so yeah.
We all know what that
Sometimes it's a test of will with my son. He'll look at me as like, is he gonna punish me if I do this?
Yeah. My son sat for 9 hours because he didn't want to have potato soup. So it's a test of wills. But with this, if you don't have some repercussion, it's not a punishment.
I agree. I definitely agree. But at the same time, I almost feel like that particular griefing, where it would make your character unplayable, that's kind of like going back to the Sea of Thieves thing with you being thrown in the brig and not being able to do anything.
Yeah, but that wasn't because of an action I did.
Well, no.
The griefing system, it's because of an action that person actually did.
Right, but I mean, even with you being thrown into the brig, even if you did something to deserve it, not being able to do anything with your character for potentially ever could be a problem.
Well, in that case, would it be more like a decay, or does it just stay there with you, for the rest of your character's life, basically?
Why can't you re-experience the experience points?
Well, again, if your stats fall too low, okay, because remember how Steven's already confirmed there's not going to be de-leveling. If there were de-leveling, then I wouldn't, because you can't probably go all the way. You can go all the way down to level 1 again. Like, there's your base level 1 stats. I'm pretty sure you can't go past that. But if you have base level 1 stats because you just you were killing people like crazy and you kept losing skills, and you're level 50, you know how leveling games work. You can't go back and kill a level 1 and get experience, which is all you'd be able to kill. You need to kill stuff of your level.
That may have to change, right? Sorry, that may have to change.
Right.
If they're going to get them that low, that particular case, they may have to change that rule.
I personally, XP debt, okay, I kind of get that, and I get that for PvE related stuff, but it all depends also on how experience is handled, right? Like, is it a commodity that you really want? Alpha Soul and I, we've been playing BDO recently. Experience, because of how you level in that, you want that experience, and if you were to do something that negatively affect you and you lost a ton, that would be painful. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if you were to losing a level in BDO, especially once you hit 50, I'd probably say like 56
plus, yeah, after Awakening, I would cry.
Yeah, exactly. There would be people. Right? Oh man.
And that's kind of what you want with an anti-griefing type system. But in this one, if you're not losing a level and you reach max level, what does experience debt really do for you? Like, why do you even need experience at that point? Other games, I'm trying to think of the game in my head. What was it? ESO gave you champion points, but it was Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 is the one I'm thinking of. Spirit shards. Once you were 80, you still got experience because every time you dinged to 81, it gave you a spirit shard, which was a currency you could use for higher end items and crafting and things. And you needed those spirit shards. So that was a currency that you still needed. Are we going to see a max level currency that you'll want to gain experience, whether it's alternate advancement or, and that may be a good topic for another show, alternate advancement or some sort of currency you get for just accumulating experience. And that's I just don't see what XP debt's going to do other than XP debt lowering your stats, and if there's not a cap, then what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, as long as, I mean, again, it really depends on what experience actually does in the game. Skill points, I'm more in agreement with skill points because that seems to be the direct translation to what you can actually do, whereas levels, it's kind of like a tertiary. Yeah, levels do affect, but levels increase your skill, and that kind of goes up. So at the end of the day, it just depends on what means more, levels or skills to them, and which one you hurt. Because ultimately, I think what we're trying to say is we want to limit somehow impede their combat ability and penalize them for having done what they've done and make it significant enough that it's not just a throwaway where they're just like, I'll bite that and I don't care about it.
Right. Yeah, because XP debt would hurt more at levels above max level, whatever that's going to be. If you got experience debt where, it took 1 million experience to go from 40 to 41, but now you have enough debt that it's essentially, 2 million, I'm doing double the work just to gain one level, but max level doesn't matter. Now, here's the interesting. And we've seen that, I think, on some of their live streams when they were allocating points and whatnot. So you get skill points while you level, and I guess also while earning experience for things. What happens if while you're earning your experience, like you can put your skill points you earn into your skills, but one of the effects of corruption is when you die, instead of gaining XP debt, you actually lose those skill points, and hence you would need to grind some experience to re-earn them again. Because maybe there's two different sets of experience, right? Maybe there's leveling experience, which we've seen in ESO, and then originally they had champion experience, right? What if there's leveling experience and skill point earning experience? So once you get all your skill points, maybe you stop earning that experience, but you can lose. Oh, I just lost 10 points and it randomly pulled 10 skill points out of my tree. So now instead of a rank 10 slash, I have a rank 8 slash and a rank 7 puncture and, a rank 5 shield block. Great. Now I'm going to have to farm 10 more skill points to get them all back up to, rank 10 again.
Yeah, I can see that working.
And that would negatively affect your combat performance because as you're losing those ranks, a rank 10 shield block is 50% damage. Well, now it's 35. You feel that. All right.
Yeah.
The other thing, gear loss. Are even excuse me, either gear loss or because we know that gear breaks, accelerated item deterioration upon a corrupted PvP death. Thoughts? Like, because, as you're using an item and you repair it, it kind of reminds me of the BDO side of things, because, as you're enchanting weapons, they have two things. They have condition and they have durability. Condition is your weapons, just, how sharp the darn thing is. And as you're fighting with it, condition goes down. Durability is how much your item can withstand before it completely breaks. So we know durability is going to go down in the game till the point where the item breaks. Let's say you lose 10 points upon a normal death, but upon a PvP death, it's like 50 points. Like, it's a lot. You're like, wow. Now this sword's going to break so much faster because of this. Is that enough of a risk as like an anti-griefing, because so much of this PvP related stuff are griefing people. It's a risk versus reward. You're killing someone, and you're going to be able to take resources that they were carrying. Not their gear, so far as we know, but you'd be able to steal whatever resources they were carrying. So if they were picking flowers, you now have all their flowers, or all their metal, or whatever. What do you guys think? Is that a way of preventing griefing?
So before we answer, did they confirm if you can restore that durability in any way, shape, or form?
Yes. They did say, I imagine it's very much going to be like BDO's related thing, where you can sacrifice a weapon of the same type to, you know, because when you were enchanting in BDO, like you were doing this, I was doing this. Every time you fail an enchantment, the durability goes down. Well, in this game, we'll say it's, you know, death or use. Every time you repair, the durability goes down. You can recraft things, and from what I understand, even if it breaks, there's an ability to reforge an item. So if for whatever reason, and this is early on, we had talked about this. Early on, the theory was if an item broke, you could essentially reforge it, but it may be more expensive to reforge it than it would be to just simply get a new item. I actually attribute this when someone said this to me. For those who don't know, I do collect medieval weaponry, and I have quite a
shock.
Huh?
I said, what a shock.
Yeah, right. I do. I love it. I actually have a boar spear in the shed back there. Just a bunch of swords and stuff. I love it. Anyway, I have several swords, right? And I actually have a few smiths, and there's one guy who actually does restorations. And I had contacted him about restoring the edge on one of my blades because I was using it. And you know, I got a little bit of turning on the, you know, on the edge because I had hit something a little too hard and whatnot. And he was going to reset the edge, but it was on one of the mass-produced blades I had, not one of you know, like an antique or something. And he's like, listen, to be frank, I can reset this for you, but the cost of me resetting this edge is more than the sword's worth. Just go buy a brand new one if it matters. Because what he specialized in was restoring antique blades and stuff like that. He's like, it's going to cost you about $9,000 to reset this edge. Okay? The sword itself is only worth $2,000. You can buy a brand new one for $2,000, right? Why would you, you know, the only reason why you'd use my service is because the sword you have is an heirloom or an antique that you want to keep, right? And that's how I kind of attribute some of these items here. You're going to have items that are your quote-unquote throwaways, right? And it's just cheaper. But what if it's a legendary item? If it broke and it was insanely hard to get it back, or maybe you couldn't even get it back because it was like a one-time thing, you would work to restore that, right? To reforge that kind of thing. So
the question is, if you're going to have that type of system, A, how does it pick the weapon it degrades? Is it the one you use? You'd never use the good one to do it.
Right, but by not using the good one, that's the same premise of even if you played Dark Age of Camelot at one point in time, their weapons broke too. Now, given it took a very, very long time, but they broke too. When Trials of Atlantis came out, one of their expansions, they had released artifacts into the game. They were these, you know, artifact weapons and armor that you could get that were just insanely powerful. The thing was, everyone could get them, but you could only get them one time per account. No matter how many, you know, no matter if you got all the scrolls to recreate it, you did the encounter and got the drops, you could only create that artifact weapon one time. And people were very careful with these weapons. They barely used them unless it was for something very special because of what it was. They eventually, you know, went back on that and changed it so you couldn't actually destroy artifact weapons and armor. That it just they just made it so that the gold cost of actually repairing it was just prohibitively high. Like, you know, a standard item costs 30 silver to repair 1 point of damage. This thing costs 50 gold to repair 1 point of damage. That's how they kind of mitigated it later. But No, I think item decay is something that is, I can have a legendary item. I can have an item in ESO that has an enchant on it. If I don't use it, it doesn't use the enchant, but then I'm not getting the benefit out of it. I mean, yeah, you're right. You could get away. If you played Ultima Online, I had I had PK in gear that was good, but not my best stuff. So that way, if I did die and they looted my body, because in that game it was full loot, you died, everything was left on your corpse, everything you were holding. I had PK gear.
I totally remember that. There was you could go out with your Sword of the Vanquishing and your full decked armor, and you'd wipe the floor with people, but eventually, if you died or people caught on that's what you actually had on, and usually you could tell because of how hard somebody was actually hitting, then you become prime target number 1, and they'd want to get that sword off of your dead corpse.
Yep. Absolutely, they would. I never wore my good stuff when I went out PKing. Never. Even though it would have technically made me more powerful, people would look at me going, oh, we're ganging up on him. Yeah. We want what he's carrying.
You're like an ESO blue tube. You're here blue tube. We're coming after you first.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. So we already talked about, we talked about prison systems, whether or not they work, or gear degradation and skill loss and experience. Here's the one thing that I really need to ask, and this will be the final thing before we move on to the mailbag. Anti-griefing. Do we need it in this game? And I ask this from the premise of, do we need a safe place? And that always something that bothered me. The people who complain. I'm not really a PvPer at heart. So this is actually coming from somebody who prefers PvE playstyle. So as some people, my wife always said, I'm not one of the meathead PvP guys. That's all I do. I actually prefer raiding and dungeon crawling over PvP. That's what I like to do. But I like knowing PvP's there. Should we cater, and should Ashes cater to the PvE only players by giving them safe spaces and anti-griefing mechanics to avoid the danger that is out there in the world?
My opinion is, in a way, no. But I think there does need to be systems that kind of balance things out, because players will naturally turn towards whatever is the more profitable route. If it's more profitable, if it serves you better to kill somebody and take their stuff, or to kill somebody and set somebody back, then most people are probably going to do it within game. As long as you have a system where, I guess you could say that the most lucrative thing, if it's killing people, isn't over the top, then I don't think you need to really protect against other people. People will adjust. At least that's my thought.
Right. Storms, what about you?
So harking back to the first discussion we had around this is, and I was thinking about this today, it's the warlord mentality, right? You're going to have, without having moral systems in place, because you're in a game, you have some moral systems, but not all. I believe you're going to end up in guild / warlord situations where I'm safe because I'm with a group, right? Like talking about today when we were out running past those galleons, it would have been nice to have a couple more with us. We could have turned around and got them, right? That would have been the way. You have a good group, you can do that. Well, then there's a bigger group, and then there's a bigger group, and there's two groups that come together. So I think it would solve itself. I think those who don't want to be griefed would eventually quit. And those, if they get out of hand, they're just going to be hunted down and slaughtered anyways, right? Because they're just going to, the warlord will say, hey, this guy's cutting too much into our group. Let's take him out. So again, I sort of agree. I don't think it's necessary. I think the Brig thing was a waste of my time. Basically, the 10 minutes I had to switch over to another game and start again. I don't know why, and that's okay. I just personally, I don't think we need it. They're going to have it, and I guess that's okay. But I'm still going to be wary of my back no matter where we are.
Right.
Now, the one thing, sorry to add it about the brig. I know before I forget this, the brig, even if you're in the brig, you still share the rewards as the other players. So you can actually just sit in there
and sit there and do nothing and
do nothing and reap the rewards.
Well,
so then you're not really doing that much against that person, right?
yeah.
They can't do anything, but they could die if you die in the ship.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's interesting on that point. No, that doesn't really seem like a punishment. Okay, I'm just gonna lay here. All right, then you'll bring
I'll
me
just
stuff.
sit here
All right,
while
cool.
y'all fight everybody.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I mean, going back to, I personally don't think we need any kind of anti-griefing. There's already, the systems are built in, you know, that, like you said, with the gear loss. There is really none. If you're not a corruption, you're not going to lose your gear on death. Yeah, you'll probably lose some of your resources you were carrying, but you can also go back to a city and offload, and then it's kind of like how we do Telvar stones in IC. Some nights we have good nights where we have big hauls. Other nights we lose a lot.
It's a fun fight.
Yeah, it all depends on how I guess you have that set up and whether or not that is your make or break for playing, you know, this type of game. If that is your make or break, maybe it's not the game for you, and it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Absolutely. There's a game for everybody. It doesn't have to be this one.
Yep.
Right.
You know what this might end up being like? I'm not sure if any of us have ever played it. My cousin plays it heavily, but EVE Online.
Yes.
You mentioned that, Aggelos. You did.
I
don't,
did.
but you mentioned it.
This is, I honestly believe, and actually we're going to hop into our mailbag, which I think is going to be fun because I'm going to make references to EVE. EVE would be a game that I would play if it wasn't set in space. I don't care for sci-fi. I like fantasy and medieval type related things. So when I heard of this and the idea of raising him, it was amazing to me. One of my favorite games was actually a game called Shadowbane, which was pretty much a full PvP game. You could put player cities where you wanted, and people could siege them and burn it all to the ground, and that happened quite a bit. So I do think this game could be a lot like EVE, and you have to go into it. And it's actually really funny because I actually heard somebody, and I'll end the topic here with this. He was remarking about his kids and how when he plays MMOs and stuff, he doesn't like to lose anything. And yet his kids are playing games like Minecraft, right? Where when you die, you lose everything you were carrying. And the kids don't seem to care. They go, all right, I'll just go back and I'll get it again. And there's no separate, like, to them, they're like, yeah, it's part of the game, you know? I died, I lost what I had, I'll go back and get it back.
You plan for it.
When did the switch happen that it became such a big deal, you know, for us? Like, we're scared to lose things. I mean,
The more you have, the more you're scared to lose.
I guess. And the kids, they could have tons of stuff. They could be playing for hours. They lose. I mean, let's go back to, I know we've all played games before, but I remember playing, you know, the old Nintendo where there was no save. And if you lost all your lives, you were starting over at, you know, level 1 again.
Yeah.
You know, when did the switch happen that we cared so much that you were too scared to lose? That was some of the most exciting times, is when you had that risk of losing something. And, you know.
Yeah. The most adrenaline-filled time that I remember was trying to place a house in No, not a house, sorry. It was a keep in UO. And just running around with that. And that was basically my game life savings. Just stuck. And if I died, somebody would just take that off my corpse. And I remember running around, sweaty palms, trying to place this damn thing, and it wouldn't place because something was in the way, and like a shrub was in the way just slightly, and then it was just hair raising. But
you saw a character move across the street. You're like, please don't be a PK, please don't be.
You're fully clenched. Like, oh,
I've been there.
No, I wasn't quite house size, but I had accidentally withdrew Telvar instead of depositing Telvar. So I had like 50 grand of Telvar, and I dropped in the arena going, okay, what do? I have this much Telvar. So yeah, it's when you make those mistakes, it's like, well, all right, let's take a risk. You know, it's open, let's go.
Sometimes it'll pay off. There's risk versus reward. You got that big payoff, you can't have the big payoff if you don't risk to lose something.
That's right.
Yep.
All right, for the last part of this show, we're going to actually finally dip into the mailbag. And I think we got enough time to probably answer one question here. So I know these have been sitting for a while, and I apologize. We just had a lot of news over the past few weeks that we had to cover, but we are going to dip into these mailbags and try to get them out. So if you are interested in sending us a letter or a question, head over to dungeoncrawlnetwork.com. There's a contact us link at the top. It'll bring up a little form. Fill that out, select the podcast from the ashes, write your question, and it'll be here. So, Happy Hansel asks, could you address the role of spies? The worst and most common damage done by spies is not through the theft of the secret battle plan, but through the spreading of misinformation, confusion, defeatism, and mistrust. The secret battle plan is often simply to gather your guild together on Saturday night and hunt for enemies. And many members will abandon a guild during a war without ever fighting battle if enough players whine that the guild is doomed. Or could you discuss guild versus guild war or city versus city war strategies in general, or how to run a PvP guild or trade guild or social guild or nomadic PvE guild, etc. And Vera, will social factions, thieves guild, religious guild, etc., different city types, and PvE versus PvE content pull a generalist guild apart, or will the strongest guilds need all types of players? Ooh, there's a lot of questions in here, but we're going to actually see how many we can hammer out. Also, oh my.
You skipped the lingerie question.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. All right. Actually, what type of lingerie do you want to see in the cash shop? Black Desert has lucky underwear.
Well, there you go.
What is the biggest fears about how the game might disappoint you, and what type of specialized guilds might thrive? So let's go ahead and start with spies first. We're going to hit up that one because I think that's probably the most interesting one. I know Happy has quite a few questions. I have some questions in here from Danny from Denmark, as well as, Archon and Thomas. So I need to start going through a lot of these, but we're going to start with spies first. What do you guys think is the role of spies? I'm actually going to jump in here and mention EVE Online, because
I was thinking of the exact same thing.
There was a story a few years ago of somebody who actually, this was like 3 years of their life. They were part of a rival corporation where what they had done was they either made a new character or left the guild they were a part of or corporation and joined this enemy corporation as a low-level, a lowbie grunt, and worked their way up to being like second in command or whatever. And once they had second in command, took everything from the guild and left in like one night.
Oh, yeah. There was a same thing, similar premise. There was a confidant man, second in command, and they got into a war with the target or rival corporation. And what they ended up doing was they've got these huge juggernaut ships. They're the most expensive things in the game, take years to actually get. And somehow his strategy got them to lose like 4 of those things, and just basically decimated them.
Yeah, I don't know if spies, depending on this, and that's something that is very interesting, is, he mentioned about the secret battle plan. Storms, you mentioned this with your guildie who is watching TeamSpeak and playing another faction. Yeah. I mean, I know he mentioned on here about the secret battle plans, but that is something that's interesting. They're passing information. They're running with a group of players and going, hey, we're running towards, the Elder Scroll at this location, We've seen that. That's actually why a lot of games, even like Guild Wars 2 and their World versus World, they had separate chats. I remember in the beginning they were using TeamSpeak, but all the officers were in one channel, and they had one guy who was part of their officer who had a listen bot in that channel, and he stayed down and relayed their orders because they didn't want to hear the discussion because they didn't know who was with them, right? So they discussed how the plan was going to go, and the intermediary kind of disseminated that to everyone else, but in very vague terms. Like, we're just going to run to the north, guys. Well, the spy's like, well, there's like 12 targets up there. And by the time that they would have realized where they were heading, it was already too late.
Yeah, I think that's actually something we're going to have to do as a guild, and we do PvP objectives, is we're going to have to do messaging like that. We're not going to say we're going to go take on this keep. We're going to say we need to go this direction for so long, and then that won't be all the way, right? We need to break that up. If they catch a hold of something, they're going to get part of it, not all of it, because they will be using different sources, such as when we were in Shore in ESO, and then, you know what, they were just a whole bunch of 12s were getting all over us. So we said, you know what, we're just going to jump over to Vivek. Lo and behold, 20 minutes later, they're in Vivek doing the same thing. So, you know what, this is tired. We're going to jump back to Shore. Within 5 minutes, they were in Shore. The guild member was not just watching TeamSpeak. He was watching the guild roster and ESO that tells you where you were. Because if you were in Imperial City and all of a sudden you popped into Cyrodiil, that means you most likely switched campaigns. So there's a lot of things we're going to have to watch for as we do this. To me, that makes it interesting.
Oh, no, it definitely makes it interesting. I know we had already talked about this as two of the guild leaders for Hands of Fate, how when we're discussing what our guild plans are for the guild. Sorry, Alpha, you're the low man on the totem pole here. And it's in this example here. Storms and I would be discussing in our high council meetings what the guild's going to be doing. And it may be a very clear target, like, okay, because we know the name of one town they use now, Morrow's Mead, that town. We're going to attack that town. That's our objective. We want to take that from whoever's holding it, and that's going to be our base. We talk about it in those terms, but when we disseminate those orders down, it'll be more vague. It'll be, to our officers, it's yeah, we plan on attacking a city. We want you to cater events that will facilitate us getting the resources to do that. And slowly the information will be there, but let's say Alpha's just a plain grunt at this point. You wouldn't know until we were at the gates of what we were doing, because we don't know who's the spy of this, and we've already seen it in the Discord. We've seen it in the forums all over the place about spies and whatnot, and from other games we've seen this kind of thing. We have to protect what information we have because of the type of game that it is. We don't want anyone to be able to know what our plans are right off the bat. And we need to try to keep that to the people that we trust, just like you would with anything. So. Yep.
I actually also view it as an attack method, because when you think about, there's a ton of Zerg guilds out there that just have an overwhelming amount of members that they'll just let anyone in. Well, this is a downside to that. You just let anyone in, you may pay the price, in some other way, shape, or form.
Right. And that's actually kind of why we shifted, as you know, we shifted away from the open invite system that we had for all the other games we've ever done as part of the Dungeon Crawler Network into a more, you had to put in an application, we have to interview you, and we go through those steps because we want to know who you are. At this early stage of the game, the game's not out yet. We're a little bit more, whatever, because the game's not out yet. Let's talk about it like that. But once the game's out, there's going to be what guilds were you a part of, and hopefully we'll be able to pull up that information via, I know EVE Online has that ability to track player information to like the letter of what they've been a part of. And that's one of the things we talked about during our guild episode, was one of the things we need. But I know any officers and whatnot, I know Storms and I, we talked about this of if you want to be an officer, we're going to make you show us your account. Like, you're going to have to stream to us your account or screen share. Because, again, they already tied it to the fact that, guilds are not account-wide. It's character-wide. Yeah, you could run multiple accounts. That could be a problem, but you're not going to be able to tell without being on the person's computer and accessing all that information, which is not, way too much for a game at this point. But if someone's running 2 accounts, they're pretty dedicated into this. But there are steps you can take, right, to kind of, okay, let's see all your characters and what guilds they're in, so we could be like, oh, I see, you made an alt guild, character or whatnot, to try to trace, where they've been, or try to hide their activities. But
yeah,
I mean, spies in this game, I know in the way Happy said about the secret battle plans and whatnot, but for a game with real consequence to it, such as all the resources it takes to actually level up a node and control it, to lose it is something that would hurt. It could be months of your guild's time to build something. So I think spies are going to be very real. We've seen them already. We've had issues with people in the community, like even in our own Discord, because we're an open community, who will say things in Discord and it's already being reported back to their guilds or whatever, whatever early drama they want to do. But you see it already. We've seen it in the official Discord too. People sending messages back and forth about X guild here, X guild here. It's just rife with this. So spies are definitely going to have a place, and they can do more damage than you think. I'm going to hit up some of the tinier questions before we finish this up. What type of lingerie do you want to see in the cash shop? None.
Yeah, none's a good answer, to be honest.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just don't need that. Right?
And let's talk about the BDO one for a minute, because I don't think this is going to be something we really have to worry about with Steven, because he is very anti-pay to win. The lucky underwear, there really was. I mean, there were different types of underwear you could get, but it all had. You had to have it. Why? Because it actually had stats on it. It provided 1 luck. It wasn't a ton of luck, but it was 1 luck, which affected like your drop rates and everything like that. So, quite frankly, I don't want to see any lingerie in the cash shop whatsoever. And I mean, with the type of game that it is, modern styles of underwear are not something I really want to see. It's a wrap of a towel, essentially, is the type of underwear we'll see, or none whatsoever. Who knows? I mean, yeah. Boy short underwear, or whatever you want to call it, was not something that existed in medieval times. It didn't. If it existed at all. In fact, you know what? I actually do. If there's any kind of lingerie in this, I want it to be like Victorian style lingerie, where it takes like 12 people to get you into it. Like, oh, I'm gonna put my corset on. Okay, I got my like 12 ladies in waiting, trying to put their foot on my back to kind of like strip it all in. Yeah, we're talking that level, right? So it takes your entire guild to help you get dressed in the day. Jokes aside, no lingerie in cash shop. Please no.
I would agree.
Yeah.
What are your biggest fears about how the game might disappoint you? I think this. Let's everyone answer this question. Storms, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Well, that's a. How might this game disappoint you? So, if it turns out to be lackluster, I don't see that as happening. But at this point, what I'm seeing, if it becomes lackluster, there's going to be a major problem to have that occur. I'm just looking at the alpha footage I've seen. I would love it. So I don't see if that is happening, but that is something I wouldn't like. Because if it turns into a non-exciting game and it's not doesn't look good, why are we playing it?
Right.
But again, I don't think that's going to happen based on what we've seen so far.
Right. I mean, and Alpha, go ahead and you'll go.
Yeah, I think for me it's kind of striking the balance between us as MMO fans, pleasing us as MMO fans, and at the same time keeping it accessible enough to other players. So, for example, the leveling curve is one thing that I'm kind of thinking of. So I think it's been stated that it'll take a while to level, it'll take a long time, and it just takes a long time to level. If you introduce too many systems that are very I guess you could say new player friendly, or even newbie friendly, if you will, then while you have a game that'll work great for a couple people, eventually over time you won't have as many people adopting the game, and as such the game will start to change in a negative light to bring in more people, thus kind of accelerating its downfall. It's kind of weird how I have this, but it's just kind of that fear.
Gotcha. To echo off what Storm says, my real fear I'll get to, the more game mechanic way, is whether or not they cannot deliver on their promises due to technical limitations. Okay? That would be, I mean, we've seen that with games like ESO. Their PvP in Cyrodiil has gotten a lot better. But, when they first sold it to us, you'd have these massive sieges and stuff like that. But when it came down to it, it was a very laggy mess. A lot of games have done that. Let's look at Warhammer Online. The city sieges were the epitome of awesome, open world, insane PvP. It took an entire server, and Steven has mentioned this, line has been in here, when sieging like a metropolis, that's a server event. Everyone's showing up, right? Well, that was the same thing that Warhammer Online said, and your entire server is going to show up to siege a capital city. Well, what happened? Servers crashed. They couldn't handle that type of so many players in such a small area for so long, and it caused server crashes. So then they started implementing systems to hide the fact. They called it the winds of change. I remember that. The winds of change, it was a notification you got. The winds of change have changed the tide of battle. And pretty much what that did was, when it realized the server was getting overloaded, it randomly picked players and ported them out of the city to some random place. That was their idea of the winds of change. I mean, kind of a somewhat lore way of getting around the fact you couldn't handle that many players. So when the server got close to cap. From a technical side of stuff, like Storm said, we're unable to meet our promises due to technical limitations. My real fear is that this is just going to become another cash shop heavy MMO where there's nothing for you to get in game, it's all your wallet. ESO is definitely one of my favorite games. I hate the fact that anything cosmetic is only cash shop. There's nothing you can earn to show what you've done.
Yeah.
Because it's all, I just got a very cool mount. It was from the free crown crates, which are the gamble boxes. I mean, it's awesome. But what does that set me apart from anyone else? No, I just got lucky on a cash shop item. We seen it in BDO. You look like a plain murder hobo if you don't buy a costume from them. Like, no armor looks good unless you buy it in the cash shop. And we've already seen them very heavily lean on their cash shop already. I'm a little lenient on it only because this is them trying to earn money for development. They're indie. I get it. But I have a real fear of this monthly cosmetic thing. If it doesn't stop at launch, it's a problem. I hate time-limited items in your cash shop. Mm-hmm. ESO is famous for that. Every month they put stuff out, and there's a bunch of time limit. Oh, you can only get this mount for this weekend, and You know, unless you've not been spending any of your cash shop currency, you likely have to buy it. It's the idea of artificial scarcity. Oh, if I don't get it now, it's never coming back. Well, they've told us if you didn't get these specific cosmetic packs that they're releasing every month, they're not coming back, right? Again, it's for them earning money to develop the game. I kind of look at this as almost like the Kickstarter related stuff. I'm okay with it as long as it ends at the launch of the game. If they start doing this monthly cosmetic thing every month once the game's launched, that will be a massive disappointment to me. Because then I'm like, why don't I just play ESO? I mean, let's be frank. Why don't I just go play ESO, which I've been playing for years already? One of the reasons why I want to get away from ESO is because of the insanely heavy cash shop everything for any kind of cosmetics. So that is actually a fear that I'm more scared of than the technical failures, because every game we've seen so far in the recent 5 years it's just how much money can we get out of our players before they move on to something else.
Yeah.
See, I told you the ghost hand. Yeah, that is my biggest fear on Ashes disappointing me, is that this will just become another cash shop heavy, you know. And part of this, and I'm going to bring this up, DCN does not have a small amount of referrals. We do have quite a bit. So, I mean, monetarily wise, we would benefit from a very heavy cash shop presence. But that would not make me want to play the game. I would rather not make any money for DCN and continue to pay for it as I normally do than have them overload the cash shop like crazy. You know what I mean? Like, that to me, it just... And I'm honestly fearing, because of the referral system, you're going to get a couple people who have a lot of referrals who are going to push Intrepid. They're like, well, we're referring tons of players to you constantly. We want to make a kickback on this, so therefore the sub's not enough. We need you to front load them with tons of cosmetics so that we get a bigger paycheck every month. And
I'm not as worried about the referrals or those who are doing the referring. Right now, again, we know they run as a small business with Steve as the head, right? Do they have a board structure? Or is, what is the presence behind Steve or beside Steve that is going to be the angel on one shoulder and devil on the other? Because in every corporation you have that. I don't know what that is yet, but that is where I'm concerned that cash shop would be pushed. How big of a voice is it going to be in his ear to push for?
And, to be frank, we saw that when ZeniMax Online Studios hired... I can't remember her name, but she was one of she specialized in marketing free-to-play games and getting the most bang for your buck in a cash shop. That was part of her resume. They hired her, and that's when we saw the cash shop just become nuts. Mm-hmm. I agree.
And that's the purpose.
Yeah, well, she's probably doing her job amazingly well, but
she's probably good. She's getting good bonus there.
Yeah, she is doing what she's supposed to. So I guess good job for you there. But it really made me lose respect for the game as a whole because of it.
We have to watch Intrepid, see when they have that, if and when they have that come aboard.
Right. All right, guys. I think that's going to end the episode here tonight. We will continue going through all of these questions. I know we only got a couple in, and I'm going to try to mix this up as we fit them in because we do have a lot. So as news slows up, I will be trying to pull at least one question per episode as long as we can fit it in to try to get through all these. But don't let that stop you from getting questions out. We will definitely answer them as we go through, and we enjoy this kind of thing. So, guys, where can people find you? Alpha, why don't you go ahead and start?
Well, I can be found normally within the Hands of Fate chat, as well as you can find me online. Actually, I'll skip that other part. Find me in the Hands of Fate chat.
There you go. That's good enough. You can see if you join our Discord, the official DCN Discord, you can chat with Alpha there. There we go. And Storms, how about you, sir?
So you can find me on Saturday nights in ESO and IC. You can find me at Twitter. Excuse me, how about Stormzlord at Twitter? You can also find, we now have a website. It's not that good yet, digitalpiperstudios.com. As we work towards our second release of the alpha, hopefully next week, we'll be able to go toward a beta, open beta, sometime in April, and we're looking to move this into the actual Android store in May. Small little word game, but one of many to come. Followed, hopefully, I just started working on a platformer. So we'll see how that goes.
Nice.
Awesome.
And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Aggelos, AGGELOS_WOF. You can follow me on the official Discord for Ashes of Creation, as well as our community Discord. You can find links to that over at our website, dungeoncrawlernetwork.com, where you can find everything we do, every show that we do, as well as links to our Twitch, our YouTube, our Facebook page, all of that. So go ahead and definitely check that out and follow wherever that you like to use. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of From the Ashes, and we will see you next week.